ones that have been sequestered, is that a good word? No, have been shadow banned. And I'm starting to wonder just how many people are really out there, because something's just not, it's just not adding up. Mike from around the world, we're looking for him right now, and we hope that he has some inside info that he could share to help us understand the time we're in. Because I think that unless we surrender to Jesus Christ, unless the man be born again, he can't see the kingdom of God. What's going on here? Mike, is that you?
Pastor Paul Begley, how you doing this evening?
Let me push that in. Let's say that again. Is this Mike from around the world?
Yes, it is, Pastor Paul. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. Sorry, Mike.
Good.
Mike, I didn't get a chance to talk to you much last week. Kind of out of pocket there with the revival down in Birmingham, but Heidi did a really good job, and you really brought some great info out last week. I want to thank you for it.
Well, Heidi always does a good job. She somewhat elicits that information, right?
Yeah, she's pretty good at it. Well, Mike, one of the things you said, and we've got a lot of stuff. We've had this Jupiter impact, a second one now, pretty big one. We got a lot of things to talk about. Gas prices, $7.59 a gallon in California. We got the shortages, the longshoremen. What's going on with, now we're hearing the railroads are about ready to strike. Mike, is this something being coordinated right now? And if so, could you tell us who's in charge of this insane, what seems like a deliberate, does it seem deliberate to you that we have this? Yeah. What's going on, Mike?
Looks that way, doesn't it? Looks that way. It's too many things happening wrong at the wrong time, right? And it would be nice to blame all of this on the pandemic. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. Just not the case. Not the pandemic itself. Take, for example, the ships that are sitting out to sea, right? They offload some of those ships, tell the rest to stay back. You've got, if you've gone to one of these docks, you can see, if you know about those stacks, you can see that the stacks are probably about 5 levels below what they could be, number one. But they don't have enough trucks. They just simply don't have enough trucks. They don't have enough trucks because a lot of people, we are down 80,000 truck drivers right now. We're down 80,000. There are incentives about to go out to truck drivers to try and get these more people recruited. The only problem with that is that takes time, right? So the railway would be a secondary measure. There's a surprise with the railways. You guys already know about it, but there's a big surprise with the railways. Let me just put that out there. You don't really need civilians for the railways, for any of them, for any train. You don't need them. So if something were to happen with the railways where the people did not want to run it, there are people on standby right now that will. One of the MOSs, for example, in the Army, is a train. You have a train conductor, coordinator, and then you have those operatives in there, so they're ready.
Okay, but now are we dealing with big union? It looks like the longshoremen. I got reports today, Mike. Truck drivers were lining up, okay, and they said they sat in there. They were lined up down the street, and the cranes weren't moving. Nothing was being offloaded off these boats, and nobody was loading the trucks that were standing in line. Are they on break? What's going?
I took a close look at the software, the logistics software, and believe me, Walmart is closely tied into this. Remember something: for the U.S., Walmart has they have the largest logistic application or program that is used by the Department of Defense. Most of this supply chain utilizes several components of Walmart. Walmart is a lot bigger than people understand. Okay, number one. Number two, the U.S. gets 42% of its imported items. You know where they come from, right? China. They come from China.
42%?
42%. We have, that's a pretty big percentage, right?
Huge.
Now, that being a real number, that shouldn't be that way, should it?
No.
And I believe that President Trump saw this. He really did. He saw this. And so how do you approach a company when you're 42% dependent. We have a dependency on China. We have a dependency. If China were to shut down shipping or anything happened to our relationship with China, and all of a sudden China said, well, we're just going to call your bluff and see, the U.S. would have a logistics nightmare. Oops, that already happened. But that's what would happen with the breakdown, right? Because you can't, when logistics is thrown off, when you have supply and demand thrown off, when you start digging into your section of inventory that no one really wants to dig into, you've just messed up your entire supply operation. And then, of course, that trickles out into other arms and it throws the whole system off. So you have China, which slowed down their shipments coming from China to the U.S.
Why?
In certain aspects.
Why?
Why? Well, because of policy. If you go back and look at some of the policies, right? President Trump had, here was a relationship with President Trump and China. President Trump, he shook his hand, yes, right? He shook his hand because he had to. We're 42% dependent upon them. But he also strengthened our defense against the Chinese machine, right? China is like a fine-tuned, a fine-oiled machine. And it is highly aggressive and very effective. And so President Trump having a business mind, he already knew this. He knew this from days past. So he set up a way that we could keep relationships with China, right? But so they couldn't overrun us. And he was slowly but surely taking our 42% dependency. He was going to take that down to zero,
yes,
right? Or to a reasonable percentage.
Yes.
But what happened was when you have any other party, it didn't matter what party comes in, but when you have people that want to sit down and negotiate, right, and talk things over, right, that nothing happens. And so we had one president that was an action president. He would do it and tell you after what he did. Now we have presidents, and normally they're on the Democratic side. They'll talk a whole bunch, and then they start doing things, and it never really pans out, because when you have a talk, if somebody's going to follow through with something, first of all, it has to be in their best interest. They have to actually approve it. You just can't campaign what you're going to do and advertise to the entire world that does not like you, by the way, and expect things to happen just like you wrote down on paper. And that's a huge flaw of what's going on right now. They actually believe what they print. So this semi-fallout with China, of course, we can see this with what's happening in all the waters, basically. On most fronts, China is calling people's bluff on most fronts. We can see this out in the open. The entire Western, domain has ganged up. Literally, they have teamed up to go against the Chinese machine, and it's costing them a lot of money. If they can somehow break that through and stop whatever's happening over there, because it's a little more happening than what people understand. But
is that why? And maybe this is the point. We now realize that we're so vulnerable. Plus, some of the policies we've done here, shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, slowing down the production of coal in West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Ohio, and some of the dumb stuff like that we've been doing here for all this green initiative. That didn't help me. It's like poking ourselves in the eye. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah, it's the wrong time.
Yeah,
it's the wrong time. There's a time and a place for this stuff. Right now is not the time, because we're not. In order to go green, we have to be on top financially.
Yeah.
We have to be on top defensively, and we're just not there yet.
No.
We have to also take care of home first.
We
can't take care of all these other countries and then allow internal portions of our country to go down the tubes. Charity starts at home.
Right.
That's what the Bible says. Charity starts at home. So,
that's right.
But when you have people who are trying to, in their minds, they want to have a placement with the international community with some sort of negotiation, some paper respect. That doesn't work. At some points it has to be all hammer. You can't have respect when you have not established your own decency, honesty, morals, and so on and so forth. We lead the whole world in everything they do, but we dropped our morals. We also, for a long time, we've been doing this internal fighting and negotiating too much. We've lost sight of where the world was going. And you had hungry nations who have actually come up, and they're like teenagers, right? And now they're stronger than the dad is, basically. All these countries we helped to raise, they're growing up, they stayed hungry, right? We sat back and tried to manage their labors, and it didn't work out too well. So now, we're starting to see that. It can still turn around, but Pastor Paul, it's going to take some
great leadership.
It's really going to take some leadership.
Well,
some real leadership to turn this thing around.
And I don't see it happening. Instead, I see us just spiraling out of control. And let me ask you a question. So this week, and I already knew that China had already fired tested a hypersonic missile, but it came out this week, and you said to Heidi, well, next week we're going to be talking about China. And then this hypersonic missile was tested. Apparently went all the way around the world. Our ambassador to the United Nations said there's nothing we can do. We're defenseless. Defenseless. Even one of the Joint Chief of Staff said we can't defend ourselves against this. And the president said, well, everybody has a right to bring, new stuff forward. Mike, are we this vulnerable, or is this?
Pastor, I know that, Pastor, China is calling the bluff of everybody that sought to go against them. China is not to be toyed with. China has had supersonic weapons, and they have Generation 6. Listen now, we have Generation 5 fighters, right?
Okay.
We're not completed our Generation 6 fighters yet. Right? I know a lot of people talk about the TRB-3 and some Aurora and these other programs. They better hope they're real, because China right now has a drone, right? They have a fleet of drones that are also hypersonic. Who else has a hypersonic drone? We're not talking about a missile.
Drone?
No, we're talking about a hypersonic drone.
Drones?
They have hypersonic drones, and they've been producing. Guess who else has hypersonics? Iran.
No.
Why are they not telling the people in the U.S. what's really going on? What is happening here? And you know what my point of contention was? When it came to China, the last 2 weeks when I mentioned China, I know you could hear a little bit of irritation in my voice when it comes to China, because here's what happens. When inside the U.S., when we throw propaganda at our own people, they start believing that we're on top of things, and in fact we're not. That's very dangerous. That's very dangerous, because what it does is it takes those folks with innovative minds and they start relaxing when they should not, right? They do this for political reasons, and they put the funding in other places. But now everything is coming back. Everything is coming out in the open. We're about to see who has what. We're about to see what's real and what's not. And if the U.S., because at Lockheed and DARPA, and you have a lot of agencies out there with a lot of mystique aircraft that the public knows them as, right? Like these aircraft that people may talk about. They may even say they're real. The problem is, it doesn't matter if we have a TRB-3, if we have another nation that can copy our aircraft in less than a week and produce it and test fly it on the second week. That doesn't matter. They have hacked us to the point, Pastor Paul, they have everything we have, plus some. They have taken all the Russian technology and bumped the Russian technology up at least 3 or 4 generations. So we have a big problem with China. China's not playing, right? China has more naval ships than we have. Is anybody aware of that?
No,
China does.
No.
China has more ground troops than we have. China has a bigger air force than we have. These guys are constantly producing. Oh, and by the way, the other hand to China is Iran, and Russia's also feeding Iran. So Iran has the pods for the hypersonic guidance, right? So imagine this. Imagine China launches a hypersonic missile from any submarine that they have underneath the water, but Iran is in control of it. Just imagine that scenario. Now, these are real scenarios.
So
do we have space-based platforms? Yes, we do. We have something called an observation platform.
Do we have lasers?
They look like a blur.
Do we have lasers?
Yeah, we have lasers also. We have lasers.
Does China?
We have lasers with the. We have installed ASA systems on the lasers themselves. We have quite a few systems. The problem is, so does China. So does Russia. Right? Of all the countries, the big countries, Russia is behind the U.S. and China. Russia's behind us.
They're in third place.
Russia's way behind China. They're way behind China, and they were actually. Russia's the one that gave China their first aircraft. Right, the MiG series aircraft. They copied these things and improved upon them. And they finally, about 12 years ago, they put in all the ASA systems and the guidance systems. But to date, they make the most advanced weapons anybody has ever seen. China does. The most advanced weapons right now.
So, Mike, are you with? Okay, let's see if we got this. China's got some unbelievable, most advanced weapons. China's way ahead of us in cybersecurity. Okay, China. We're depending upon China. 42% of everything that we have to, all goods and services, everything that we have to eat and consume, everything we need. 42% of us. China has hypersonic missiles. China has lasers. China has superiority and intellectual advantage, maybe even. I don't know. We've got some stuff that we've never showed yet. I'm sure they do. But bottom line is, the game has changed. It's almost like we're at a dead even here. The difference is they got a plan, and we don't. Am I right? They got a plan.
Yeah,
we got people. They're not talking about let's become a democracy over here. They just stomped Hong Kong into submission. They got a plan. We got people destroying democracy, wanting to be like them. Mike, this can't last. We can't last. This can't last.
No, not like this. It's not going to either, because right now there's another change also taking place. Keep in mind, China being 42% of the U.S. maritime imports, period, right? That's about, what is that about? That's almost 4 million shipments, about 4 million shipments. And the U.S. is leading the way in its dependency upon China, number one. So keep that in mind, because somehow, for the sake of our people, we have to maintain that. Right? We have to maintain that until we can take it over. But right now, even in the supply chain, now there's some things in this supply chain problem they don't want anybody to know for let's call them defense reasons, right? So you always have that defense chunk where the populace is just simply not going to know a few things until it's time. But getting off our dependency is one of the biggest things. China, however, continues to advance in what they're doing. But here's the bad part. The moves they're making, Pastor Paul, they're not playing around with. They've gone to the moon, right? They've gone out in space, correct? Yeah. They've already mapped all of our communication satellites, so on. There's a war in space over our heads right now. There's always been a war with communications. And we have these things are about to spill into our visual reality, meaning there are a lot of things that have been taking place behind the scenes that nobody ever talks about because they cannot be seen. They're too far away from us. But under the oceans and in the heavens, people are going to begin to see a war, right? A war. The problem is you can't bluff your own people saying we're out there. Like I've been saying, Pastor, for a long time, the U.S. has been maintaining, well, the entire Western Alliance has been maintaining this visual that everything is normal. Folks, everything is not normal. It's just not normal, right? And when you think that you're on top, one of the first things you do is relax yourself. Yeah. This is by no means a time when people should get relaxed, because they're going to change the system right underneath our feet. For example, this inventory issue, this supply chain issue is going to bring out what nobody really wants to see. It's going to bring out federalized control of several transportation elements. We go. Several transportation elements. The bill was passed in 1917. It's been amended a few times, and more bills have come from that. So it's not that hard to do. And when you begin to see the men and women in uniform being called up to run certain, diesel vehicles, so on and so forth, it's on the table. It's about to happen, right? So we have this switch from people, on one side, people are saying, look, we don't want to comply with weird stuff that you guys are mandating, so we're stopping. And it looks like, a lot of people are walking off their jobs and stuff, but what you may not know is that there are other folks coming in, taking their places. They're going to come right in and take their places.
From other countries. They're going to come in,
they're going to federalize every gap a civilian leaves. One thing civilians should not do is walk away from whatever they're in. They should fight tooth and nail for their rights, but they should not walk off. They ought to fight that. You know, don't walk off the job. Keep the job and fight the mandate. Do what you have to do, but don't leave a big hole in all these places, because every hole they leave, somebody else is already prepped to come in and take their position.
And aren't a lot of those people that are taking a position, I understand, are coming in from other countries and are less qualified in a lot of cases, willing to work for a little less. I already see nurses being brought in from all over the world now. And they don't, matter of fact, they're not nurses. They're not even at the same education level and experience level as the nurses that are walking off or not even walking off. Some are walking off and some are just being thrown off. But either way, people are taking their spots. And you're saying this is going to get federalized. Now, I want to remind folks of something. This is Mike from around the world speaking to us tonight. I went back and looked in November of 2019. We did a broadcast on Thursday night with Mike, and it was the first time he made mention of this: empty shelves. Out of nowhere, Mike goes, oh, by the way, you're going to see empty shelves pretty soon. And I said, what are you talking about? Are you serious? And he goes, no, seriously, the shelves are going to start running out of items that you're going to notice things are disappearing. And other stuff, and there's going to be like, where'd the brand names go? Where'd this go? The shelves are going to start getting empty. Folks, this was before the pandemic. So, Mike, you already knew somehow through intel and prophecy or prophetic prayer that what we're experiencing right now, I didn't forget that. And then you said about 4 months ago that, hey, Pastor, just let everybody know that soon you're going to see these white piggyback semi-trucks on trains that are government supplies or government food. Are you saying that's still coming? We're a long way from recovery, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to recover a different way if people see, Pastor, it's almost like with people, right? I understand that everybody wants to take a position, right?
Right.
But I'm almost yelling it out. Don't walk away from your position you're in. Whatever position you're in, don't let circumstances cause you to leave that. If they leave a hole where they're at, somebody who does not think like they do, who does not have morals like they do, is going to take their place, and that's how things are going to start to crumble all over the place. It's going to be very, very different. And before you know it, right, before people come to this realization, it'll be too late. The numbers will be too great on the opposite side. Right now, because people are holding their jobs and actually starting to fight against some of these issues they don't like, right? It's somewhat of a balance. But as you can see, you start messing with the supply chain. You know the next steps. When the supply chain goes down, people start getting desperate. They'll say, go ahead, give me that program. I'll sign up for this program. They're tough at first. But then when it looks bleak for their families, that's when they begin to change. And when they begin to change, you're looking at an installed system and the doing away of an old system, right, that the people are making this decision. This decision is going to be made by people. If people give up, we can forget it. People need to they have to stand their ground, lawfully, of course, but stand their ground. And they need to fight whatever avenue they need to take by lawyers, whatever the case is. They need to exercise that to its fullest extent while they're still working. Because if they don't, some folks who you don't want at the helm are going to walk right in, and they're going to do what nobody else would have the morals to do, and then we're in trouble.
Folks, Mike from around the world's with us. He's telling us the truth, and you know, I remember when you told us that the meteorites and the asteroids, things are coming. You know, we just had a meteorite land 15 miles outside of Hot Springs, Arkansas, 2 days ago. Some of the folks in our online church actually saw it. It had green. It was burning green underneath the bottom, and as it went to the teardrop, it was a crimson red. That probably means something to you about what type of metal or makeup that was. And I'm wondering if that's part of this incoming debris field. We also seen that Jupiter got hit again 2 days ago. Major explosion. It shows up again. Not quite as big as the last one, but huge anyway. 2 Jupiter collisions. We were told that was going to happen in the little green file 2 years before it happened. Mike, you knew this debris cloud was coming. We're keeping track of these things that you've been telling us, and one after another keep coming to pass, including government food, empty shelves, empty trains, not enough drivers. Pretty soon, power's going to go off if we don't have enough. If trains don't run, coal don't get moving, electric power plants go down, or rolling blackouts in the dead of winter. Are you expecting any of that kind of stuff this winter?
Oh, they already have. They had a mandate by 2020 that all of the U.S. bases, military bases, were self-sufficient. Right? Remember that? I think I stated that back in 2013. They had a mandate. By 2019 ended 2020, they extended it, that all U.S. bases be self-sufficient with power. At the same time, in 2020 and 2021, they installed all the smart meters all across America.
Yes.
So people have a different, power meter. It's almost like these guys went out like ninjas and started replacing things. So those power meters, what they do is they allow a computer to clip your power. Now, this is very important. That means a person is not going to cut your power. A computer will, based on a program. If the program sees that your billing date is too many, days past the point of payment or something like that, you're going to get clipped.
What?
If the network is overloaded a fraction of a percent in certain areas, they're going to get clipped, and they are prioritized, because in those networking systems for all power companies, they have to prioritize zones, right? So depending on the zone you live in, if you're around something very important, you may have additional power. But if something ever happens, if anything happens, they're going to start. The power grid's going to fluctuate, Paul. If anything that could happen, a school could be taken. Somebody could take a school hostage. I'm telling you now, part of cutting the power is going to be in the hands of Homeland Security. That program that they're running goes into a mainframe, and they can easily override, right, the power companies to officiate certain things with tactical movements, and this is already set up. It's already set up. It's set up right now. So they could, if they wanted to hit the switch and turn everybody off, they could just go ahead and do it.
So you're saying with the smart meter system now, they can pick and choose which neighborhoods, which areas, which sections, which congressional neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
Blue state, red state, whatever. They can decide where to start the rolling blackouts, blame it on the pandemic, blame it on the shortages of supply. And they start to use. That sounds like Pakistan. I mean, we've been helping the pastor and the orphanage there in Pakistan and in India. That's the things that third world countries do. They do rolling blackouts, and you know the elitists, the lights never go off. Kennebunkport, Maine, the lights will never go off there. No. But in North Judson, Indiana, where the cornfields of Indiana, where I lived and come from, I mean, they're going to spend a lot of nights in the dark because nobody cares about them corn farmers and hog farmers and all these people. We are living, what you're saying, Mike, is control. It's chaos they're using chaos for control. Are you saying this is the beast kingdom coming into play? We have to keep fighting, but is that what we're seeing here?
Well, you must. And Pastor Paul, just to remind everybody, they used to have people standing behind. They used to be operators. You call up, an operator would answer the phone, right? A computer does that now. Still operator, right?
Right.
Your electricity used to be handled by an actual person. A person might have to check your name out and say, no, we didn't disconnect you, or we're going to get you connected, whatever. Now it's a computer. A computer can clip your power. And this is what I'm saying. When they computerize all the logic behind whose lights stay on and whose lights go off, right? I'm telling you right now, based on priority, you can have a computer dance around everybody, right? You can name your important areas and tell that computer, hey, this area stays on no matter what. Do what you have to do to everybody else, but this area is priority. And that's what they have done. They did this, Pastor Paul, because it takes the guilt away from those who would have that terrible responsibility of shutting people's lights off, because death will be involved with a power outage. We're going to see that this winter when the fires begin, right after winter breaks and the rain kind of whistles away. We're going to see massive fires all over the U.S. And I'm telling you right now, that's when people are going to experience these blackouts. They're going to say, nothing's wrong in this area. Why is our power out? And they're going to say, well, we're just balancing the grid. You know, it's a computer doing it.
Israel, could you turn your mic on for a second? Israel told me this several months ago, and I was like, what are you talking about? How did you explain that to me, Israel?
Mike, I've experienced some of that too, almost like an AI can follow you and target you.
Sure it can.
And
sure it can.
Yeah, I was doing some business deals in Nashville that were pretty big, and had been under some problems with people. And right after I would talk to people on the phone, like the power would go out in their building and knock things out, ruin business deals for me. It happened a lot.
Sure
actually,
it can.
and it was very strange.
Sure it can. They used to call that electronic harassment, but now some of the artificial intelligence modules that have already been installed, they know you better than the CIA, FBI, any of those three-letter agencies could ever know you. A computer knows exactly who you are, and they have already trended if you're going to mess up something down the road or not. This is one aspect to artificial intelligence a lot of people have not thought of, is that artificial intelligence can plot what you're likely to do, what you're prone to do, a month ahead of time, right? So it's going to stop you now from what you may do in the future. And that's part of the appeal to a lot of people with artificial intelligence. It's beautiful for business. It works with the stock market. In fact, if you see digital currency right now, why is digital currency doing so good?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
It's making people rich. Pastor Paul, Bitcoin is up. It's $63,000 per share. Do you know Bitcoin was $200-some a share not too long ago? Right?
Yeah.
You have all these sub companies that are linked in with Ethereum, Bitcoin, all these other places. And they're coming up. They're starting out 27 cents, 22 cents. Facebook just launched something today with digital currency that was 22 cents. I guarantee by tomorrow it's going to be up there in price, because everybody's jumping over to this virtual, all this virtual world stuff is what they're doing. And a lot of people, the people who don't know about the virtual world, they're going to be left in the dust with, when it comes to the world.
Yeah.
But folks, listen, this is a kingdom that is incredibly massive. It's wired in all over the place. There's no way to get yourself away from it, but you most certainly have to stand up in it. And if you lose your values, here's the bad part. If a person compromises on anything, right, that system is going to know it, and it's going to begin to manipulate your life in ways you never thought possible. But if you stand your ground, right, if you stand your ground and you don't move left or right morally, but you stay straight, I'm telling you right now, the algorithms that are in the back running with these AI programs, they cannot function correctly, because part of human behavior is change, and they depend on people giving into fear and elements like that, but they can't forecast correctly when you stay your course.
Right.
Morally. When you stay your course morally, I'm telling you right now, it just messes up the trending that they utilize.
So once again, the beast kingdom in Revelation 13. And I've just heard you talk about that, the interaction of computer and man. It's like clay and iron in the toes in Daniel. It's not going to mix, but it's going to leave some people in the dust. Here's one thing what you're saying here in Revelation 13. What you're saying is that this system is bringing us to our knees, that people will be forced to choose their convictions for Jesus Christ, or for food, or for shelter, or for what they believe to be their only hope of existence, when that's not true. God spoke to me this week. He said, Paul, because I said, Buddha judge and the supply chain, this guy's driving me insane. The Lord said, don't worry about, the world has a supply chain, but remember, I will supply every need according to the riches and glory in Christ Jesus. Keep your moral compass on chart. Don't waver. I will be there for you. But if you waver, you're like the chaff driven in the wind. You can't be double-minded. Is that what you're saying? Because we're going to hit some hard times, Mike. Let's be honest. It's going to get more difficult in the next 6 months. Would you agree with me?
It will, Pastor Paul. Let me try to describe what people they're factually going to see this. the initiation of hardship is going to be by people seeing what's happening in the world. You know, there's a passage in the Bible when it says the beast will overcome the saints.
Yeah,
right?
It does say
that. But how? How? Wait a minute, how? Because God never gives Satan power over them.
No.
So, you know, I kind of got nosy and looked into overcoming the saints, and I found that people were overcome in this one way because he was giving them out speaking great things. They were overcome because what they wanted did not take place.
That's right.
It didn't take place. And what the beast wanted absolutely took place. In that way, he overcomes the saints of the Most High.
Yes,
right?
That's
now,
right.
if we keep our morals, no matter what it looks like, and this is going to be very difficult because can you imagine everybody in a neighborhood giving in to, you know, whatever agreement? This is important politically. This is important in your personal life everywhere. Keep your morals because there's no such thing as privacy. That's a facade.
That's out the door.
Nobody has privacy.
No.
You don't try to hide anything. Everything is visible, right?
Yep.
Everything is.
Yep.
So don't think that way. But think in this way, that you have supernatural protection of your Father in heaven. I know this for a fact. The same way Israel said they harassed him electronically, messing up his deals. I know for a fact, I'm living proof that the Lord can totally just make that system blind concerning you. I'm absolute proof of that, right? That system can be blind concerning you. It can absolutely get it wrong for your benefit. It can do this every single time. But if we begin to compromise, Pastor Paul, I'm telling you right now, it's almost like a person who is trying to stay upright, and all of a sudden they give into sin, and it feels like their whole life fell apart. That's what happens. And then they feel rotten, but things happen around them. But this also has supernatural overtones because the same people that are behind artificial intelligence for real, that are in the big tanks, the liquid tanks, right? These guys worship things nobody's ever heard of before.
What?
And they are devout in their worship. And you better believe that CERN, right? The breakthroughs at CERN are pushing this artificial intelligence expansion.
Time out.
Big time.
What, are you serious? Okay, so let's talk about CERN for a minute. What breakthroughs in CERN? I mean, that's pushing AI intelligence. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, Pascal, with at CERN, right? One of the main objectives was to reach into another dimension and grab energy, right?
Yes.
Now, but this energy comes in a form, and it comes in a form of power and memory. That's what it comes in a form of. So they utilize computers like the D-Wave and other computers out there, even Amazon. They utilize this other dimension to super process information. For example, if I were to put into one of those computers, what would, 1 plus the number of cells in my body be in another 20 years? It'll run through every single possible scenario. Every possible scenario in my body, second to second, for the next 50 years, and output it before I can finish hitting the enter key, right? So what I'm telling you is that they'll put in a little bit, right, and they'll get out a whole bunch. Energy-wise, it's almost like taking a AA battery, you put it in that dimension, and you pull out a nuclear power plant. That's what the comparison will be. So they're pulling stuff out of this negative dimension because they've actually found out how to use power from this other place. Since the 1940s, they've been storing up antimatter, right? They've been storing up antimatter.
Tesla.
Right. And he's aware of some of what he can tap into some of what's out there, but he can't get his hands on it. China, by the way, they've already done it. They've done it. They already know about it.
With that artificial sun? With that artificial...
They already know about it. They already know about that stuff. They have CERN. They're part of CERN, too. They can't fool me in this because that science is locked in together, right? They don't care who can dig into the other dimension. But that other dimension is causing a massive imbalance in our world. I want everybody to think about this. The moment CERN began its experiments, life was very different. It was very different. You could almost see the outcome of situations. As they advanced in CERN, things became more chaotic within people and their minds. People's minds are more chaotic now than they ever were. Things are very different, is what I'm saying. That imbalance I talked about in that presentation with CERN, it's happening, right? You can't pull anything out of any other dimension because you'll get the balance off in this dimension. Whatever is utilized in that dimension is going to have to be paid for from this one. right? So
Right.
what you see is a transference of things happening. That's what you see. That's also physics. That's why they come up with quantum physics. Things that don't make sense, but they make a lot of sense. They just don't want people to know it and recreate the experiments themselves. But this stuff is happening, Pastor Paul, and with that type of energy, it takes that type of energy to run some of these artificial intelligence computer systems. And by the way, MIT, they did experiments a long time ago, and they integrated a rat brain cell with a processor. You know what they found out?
What?
It's a perfect match. It's a perfect match. Brain cells and neurons will automatically grow on a microchip because the architecture is similar. And for some reason, your neurological cells and your brain cells, right, they can actually adapt to computer architecture. So guess what? You better believe that some of this technology that's in existence today has grown, just like the one at Microsoft and just like the one at Google. And I mean grown. So it's 50% technology, but the greater part of that is that it can grow brain cells. And if it grows brain cells and it has adaptation capabilities, then that's why they're in these liquid tanks stuck in the middle of nowhere, so nobody can get to them and they can't get to anybody else.
Are you serious saying that the computer can grow brain cells?
Once you meld it with a human tissue, all you have to do is feed it proteins and things like keep it alive, right? It grew on the microprocessor.
That's an AI. You're creating an
perfectly.
Artificial. Let me ask you a question. I've been dying to ask this question. Okay, I've talked to some guys, former NSA guys, people like that. They say, look, if you knew what was underground in some of these laboratories,
you don't want to know.
Mike, talk to me. Is there people? Is there clones? Is there people down there who got AI bodies or?
So what? Okay, what would be artificial intelligence? Is just basically an algorithm that allows a computer to reprogram itself. Right? In theory,
yes.
That's what it is. So it's a learning machine. So they have learning chips, chip-based, right?
Yeah.
So if you took that same architecture with the studies they did in 1972 at MIT and you melded those together, you could grow a brain, some sort of a brain, right? If you get too many neurons together, here's what really happens. When you grow up, if something were to grow a brain, right? Here's the one element that's missing. It always happens this way. This is why things are digital, and they only went so far with the rat. They destroyed one of those rats. The other one's still living. But you can only go so far because you cannot help but to get into the ethereal plane. Now, what I mean by that is at some point to have consciousness, you have to have a spirit. And the spirit is not, that's not an improved spirit by our Father, right? Which is why some of the cloned animals they had, can you imagine a little poodle or a sheep? They had a sheep that tore another sheep limb to limb. When's the last time you heard of a sheep eating up another sheep?
No,
they don't do that.
No.
But when you clone something, it's not authorized. So where's it going to get its spirit from? They found this out a long time ago.
Devil.
You have to have a spirit in order for something to have a consciousness or an identity or something. And every time they clone something, a spirit pops into it. That's what they found out. And it is not a godly spirit.
That's what I'm saying. It's not of God. So I'm going to ask you, are they building an army of, is it possible that they're growing, they're cloning physical specimens without a soul that, or the spirit they have in them is not the spirit of God. It's not the God-given spirit. It's not the breath of life from God. But can they be putting together people to release on the earth later, maybe during the time of Armageddon or during the time of Apollyon? Is this happening? I really need to know. Are they really got people growing in test tubes?
You've probably already, this is going to sound nuts, but you've seen them. Everybody who's listening to me, they've seen one of them. You already know their names. You've utilized their product. Take a close look at this person, and you'll find out this person has some weird physical attributes. And by the way, they started cloning people, right? Successful cloning back in World War II.
Okay.
All right. They also took a human body and put a animal head on a human body successfully.
No.
And that specimen was called a chimera.
Yes.
Right? Chimera.
Yeah.
They also, from those experiments, learned how to splice cells, right? So you can mix spider with human DNA, right? So that the skin is like kind of like metal. All right, that's called a chimera, which is probably why in the White House they passed a bill where chimeras now have rights. Just so you know, that this is an actual bill.
Come on. Oh, by the way, you talked about.
I mean,
I did.
Congressional papers aren't going to lie. That's right there in Congress. There you go.
I mean, you did say we do need to. We could grow some brains. I think we could probably need. Wouldn't hurt to have a few brains grown for some of the folks in Washington. But that's another story. Let me ask you this question, Mike. Bezos, Zuckerberg, I mean, are these guys real? I mean, is there anything there that just doesn't fit the bill or some kind of...
Sure it is. Sure it is. Normally with these people, right? If you ever meet a person, first of all, they're kind of like, they have calculating minds, all right? They don't know how to interact with a lot of other people. They don't know how. In other words, they're lacking personality. Right, they're lacking personality.
Yeah.
They're more like machines than a person. They're lacking personality. Also, you hardly will ever see them blink.
Ooh.
You hardly ever see that, right? Now, for somebody who studies how a face ages, there are physical effects that you can also see. Noriega said this, and Hussein was terrified of it, believe it or not. There are quite a few people that were presidents that warned about Reagan, warned about it twice. Carter was terrified by it. He was terrified by it. But all these stories are coming out anyway. So they'll go ahead and tell you, I mean, they clone sheep, they clone people, they clone just about anything they can clone. The problem is, again, when they don't have a sanctioned spirit. Right? Because everybody here on earth is born of God, by the will of God. So if they create something, it's going to get one of these leftover spirits that are already here, and it's going to inhabit them. Now, if you started creating bodies and suspending those bodies in fluids, just like they do with embryos, in fact, you'll find, if anybody looking can find, that they grow bodies all the way up to the age of 5, but they're not real people. They're absent certain genes that allow cognitive functioning and everything else. And they have been utilizing these people as specimens. They shut that down in 2000, I believe it was 2013 or something like that. They shut that down. They were growing people, right? People, copied people. And they were utilizing aspects of these copied people. And these labs that were out there, they shut this down. Can you imagine, with no oversight, how far they have actually gotten? Because you don't have oversight of something that's secret. So if that is the case, then the truth be told, if that were the case and they continued from the 40s all the way up to this present day, there could be legions of people underneath our feet.
Legions of people. All right, now here's something for you, Mike. Okay, we've went through this pandemic. Here come the variant and the variants and the variants. Do you have any information? You let us know that this was going to happen. You 3 months before it happened, you said a lot of people are going to die in China. And like, what from? I was going, well, what about? He goes, just hang on. Is there something else coming, Mike? Is there something else already been released?
Fastball believers, people here in the U.S., right? I tell you, we're in a time where a lot of folks are going to not going to make it. We're just in that time. A lot of folks are not going to make it. In fact, for believers, I'll say it again, believers really in this hour, they need to believe with all of what they are. They need to stand up and believe and be moral and really become wise and keep their eyes. Don't shut your eyes, go into a corner or anything, because there are a lot of things that are just being drudged up. They're being drudged up, and it's going to cause a lot of fatalities. COVID-19 was more of a test than anything else to see how people would handle certain things. Pastor Paul, what comes next won't be like COVID-19. It just won't be like that. It's going to be much more aggressive. So, yeah, we're going to face more than a few. It's kind of like Jupiter, right? Jupiter saw, what, 2 impacts so far?
2 impacts
We'll
this year.
talk after the 6th one. We'll be talking about that one. The 6th one, the one they just had, by the way, it was about the size of Earth. You know what left that glow that you see on Jupiter? That was about the size of Earth.
The size
That's how big
of
that
Earth.
impact was.
So
that was the size of Earth.
Mike, are you telling me that we got we got asteroids. Are you serious? We got asteroids coming that are that big?
You do a side-by-side comparison of what you saw hit Jupiter just recently, right? That's the size of Earth. You do a scaled image of Jupiter and Earth. You put Earth right in the, it'll fit right there beside that circle. Jupiter's huge, right? It's huge. And that white dot showing up like that, that is enormous.
Show that again, Israel.
Some people, when they do these estimates about comet sizes, right, NASA, they downgrade the sizes, right? They drastically downgrade the sizes. There's no way they're going to tell somebody, hey, something the size of the moon hit this planet. They can't tell people that. That would just scare people to pieces. So what they do tell them is that, something hit this planet or something hit this planet. Because if people knew the sheer size of what's going around in the asteroid belt, of what keeps coming past the Earth, of what will eventually... See, it's not a question of if. It really is the timing of when. We're going to be struck not once, but multiple times. We have been so incredibly blessed, Pastor Paul. Earth is a miracle to survive to this very day. We're certainly being watched, but
it's the grace of God.
For how long?
It's the grace of God, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And folks, as you're listening here tonight, you might say, oh, my Lord, this is so much doom and gloom. I don't know if I can take another day. The truth is we can take a lot more than what we're taking. Truth is we can handle a whole lot more than what we've been thrown at us so far. And we better get tough and understand that. I think don't sit on the back porch and wait on the rapture. Be about the Father's business. Take ground. I think that's what I'm hearing Mike say. Stand your ground. Matter of fact, take some ground. Okay? Don't run. Don't retreat from the enemy. Run at the enemy in the name of Jesus. And don't surrender your position. And be strong in the faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And don't be like the Bible said. Some of them began to say, well, the Lord delayed his coming. So I think I'll just eat and drink and be with the drunken. And he said he'll find you when you're not ready. Okay? So don't just get slothful. Don't just quit church. Don't just throw in the towel. Don't just give up on your faithfulness that you've been having with God. Keep your devotions going. Keep praying. Keep fellowshipping, even the more so when you see the day approaching. Keep tithing. Keep reaching out with a hand of love to folks. Don't back down. Keep the light shining. Am I right, Mike? Is that what you're saying?
That's right, Pastor Paul. You know what? In fact, I would say speed up, because all that stuff in Revelation, that's what the Christians will behold of those who did not stand with the Lord. And that's going to be painful to see. It'll be painful to know. It's real bad to know when somebody you love is not with the Lord, and then they have to go through that stuff. The Christians, we've already been protected. We made it this far. The Lord didn't bring us all these days just to have us go through a bunch of torture. That's not how things are set up. It's set up so that we can stand up with a message, and the distractions are about to be blown to smithereens. So think of that. All these distractions are going to be gone. That means whatever message we have to deliver is going to be quite clear to those who are ready to receive. But we have to be standing to give that message. Right, Pastor Paul?
That's right. You can't back down, folks. You got to get on the ship while it's at the dock. You got to stand up now. This is the moment where the real rubber meets the road. We've heard about this end time. We've heard about all these things that Mike has been talking about. I've been talking about, some of the others out there. Now you're seeing it. Now you're feeling it. Now you realize it. Where is your faith now? Can you sustain it? Is that what I'm hearing you say, Mike, in these end times?
That's right. That's right, Pastor. All of us, standing up in the name of Christ is standing up in the stead of Christ. And that's real important in these days, because what example do people have if they don't have ambassadors to Christ? And are we not named as ambassadors to Christ?
Yes, we are.
Because we have a representation of the kingdom of God, and they see no other representation but through us. So we have to be watchful, careful, and diligent about what we represent all the time. And now is the time we've been training for. All the training, all the prayer, all the learning, everything is so that we could stand in this day. That's why the Lord put us right here in this generation. We're not born by accident, but by the will of God. We're supposed to be in this time, and we're built for this time.
Amen. Mike, so next week, what do you think? What we're going to be talking about? You nailed this one.
I think some of what we discussed tonight is going to open up by this Thursday coming up. In fact, people are you probably have to tell them, calm down this Thursday coming up for real. I'm sure it's going to be could be some frightened folks here, Pastor Paul. Whenever things break out, people get frightened. And everybody, if you want to, I'm praying for those in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Japan. I hope that you guys do the same.
Philippines, Indonesia. In Japan? Is it because of volcanoes and tsunamis?
Pastor Paul, they have some issues under the water. They have some issues, and they need prayer. Because I doubt if I gave a small example a couple of days ago. I told everybody, I said, listen, you're not going to see this printed anywhere. Nobody's going to divulge this. I said, but something has awakened. The next day it was an eruption, right?
Yeah.
A very ancient volcano. But today they're having earthquakes. And in those same areas, there are too many heat plumes being, picked up there. So they need prayer because they're not going to be warned about it. And they're always going to underestimate what the potential could be. So prayer for those folks.
8,000 people with us tonight. They've right now at this moment, and you've heard the truth tonight. And Mike, we really appreciate you coming on here, opening up your heart and soul, and sharing with us some very important information. We will keep watching the Lord's coming back. See you next Thursday night, Mike.
God bless you, Pastor Paul. It's always an honor.
Always an honor. God bless you, brother.
God bless.